Hello and welcome to No Earthly Explanation with Marcia and Jody. We are just two ladies who have curiosity about things that have no earthly explanation. Hello, I'm Jody Martin, the training coordinator and director at Miami Valley Communication Council. I am also the executive director of the Bellbrook Sugar Creek Chamber of Commerce. Prior to local government and public sector, I worked for 21 years at Dayton Public Schools as a teacher and school administrator. Marcia and I became friends through my grandpa Martin. My grandpa Martin, most currently known as Jim Pee Wee Martin, was a World War II veteran. My grandpa Martin fought through the entire European theater during World War II. While Marcia and I would visit him, we developed a friendship. And through that friendship, we started talking about things, and we realized we had one thing in common and a connection. It was things that happened that have no earthly explanation. Meet my co-host, Marcia. She and I are here today to talk to you about a new book she wrote, Transcending the Heart, When God Sent Me the Ghost. So, Marcia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marcia Treadway, and I'm a retired journalist and freelance writer. I've worked the majority of my career in Bellbrook and Sugar Creek Township. My work has appeared in the Dayton Daily News, the Xenia Gazette, USA Today, and several neighborhood and alumni magazines. I was a newspaper reporter assigned to Bellbrook and Sugar Creek Township many years ago. I also worked 10 years for the local school district. My book, my first book, is about the history and haunting of Bellbrook with a twist.
So, Marcia, when did you first discover or know you had an interest in writing?
It was a long time ago, back when I was in 8th grade. I love telling stories. I was just an average student, but the teacher gave us an assignment one day to write a story about anything we wanted. I was absolutely shocked when my paper came back with a big red A on it and a note, "You have a wonderful imagination."
So, Marcia, what did you write about in that 8th grade story?
Oddly enough, Jody, I wrote about aliens visiting Earth from another planet.
With no earthly explanation, right?
Right.
What was the genre of your new book that you just released, Transcending the Heart, When God Sent Me the Ghost?
My book is actually a memoir of nonfiction. A memoir is written from the perspective of the author and usually about something important that happened to them during their life. My book has also been classified as a biography and an autobiography, while in fact I've seen it on the internet also listed as a self-help book.
Interesting, right? So, Marcia, when you say your book is about the history and the haunting of Bellbrook, do you mean paranormal?
Jody, I guess you can say that. However, the term paranormal is sometimes associated with horror, and horror is meant to horrify you. Paranormal is also considered fiction, and my stories aren't any of that. My stories are true. I've documented a lot of them. I've had personal experiences throughout this process. So I decided, since my stories were true, I needed to come up with my own genre. So to better category my investigation and research, I've come up with the word transnormal.
So, what does transnormal mean, Marcia?
Jody, it simply means beyond what is normal, whatever that is.
I'm curious, how did you get involved into investigating paranormal activity?
That's a good question, Jody, because it certainly wasn't my intention to do such a thing. There I was, 55 years old, and a grandmother of 10, and I'm out there in Bellbrook looking for ghosts. But as a young adult, the majority of my loved ones died way before they should have. When I began seeing and experiencing things in Bellbrook that I had no earthly explanation for, my instincts as a reporter kicked in. I wanted to find out if the afterlife really existed.
So, Marcia, during this whole process, how long have you been investigating no earthly explanation activities?
My investigation and discovery spanned a little over a decade, but it started out on my job with the Bellbrook Local School District when 3 graduates working their community service hours at the Family Resource Center, then located at the Sugar Creek Elementary building, they had some mysterious experiences that they couldn't explain. So for a graduation gift, the 3 students asked if they could have a ghost hunt one night. The director procured permission, and she asked for a couple of volunteers, which one of them was me, and we went out one night and we spent hours scaring each other. Then about 1 o'clock in the morning, we took a break, and the boys went outside and had an experience and captured some photographs that had no earthly explanation.
So, Marcia, with all of that, how did this finally become a book?
Well, as I was working as the community relations coordinator for the school district, I helped on many events and fundraisers. I met a longtime community member. His name is Steve Berryhill. Now, anybody that knows Steve knows him as the official historian of Bellbrook. Steve could rattle off history of every building located what is now known as Bellbrook's Old Village. I'm talking about things from 225 years ago. That man knew the year it happened. So when Steve asked me what I'd been up to lately, I mustered the courage to tell him I was ghost hunting. Expecting for him to laugh, he looked at me and seriously said, "Oh, I believe." From then on, Steve helped me and a few others gain access to historical buildings and homes. And eventually, we began comparing Steve's history to the results of the paranormal investigations, trying to make a connection. And after a few years, I told Steve I was going to write a book about this. I would write the stories, and Steve would check the history and make sure it was correct. The book was to be about the history and haunting of Bellbrook. I began writing the book. Then my adult son died suddenly at the age of 32, and everything stopped. A few years later, I did complete the book. I called Steve and told him the book was finished, and he asked to meet me at a local coffee shop so I could give him the manuscript to read. As he was leaving with the manuscript tucked under his arm, it dawned on me I forgot to tell him. The book evolved from just the history and haunting of Bellbrook to include my paranormal turned supernatural journey. It should be noted, he had no changes to the history part of the book, although he was very surprised at the rest of the content.
So, Marcia, through all of your experiences in the old village of Bellbrook and beyond, what has been your most frightening paranormal investigation?
Well, funny you ask. My most frightening investigation was at the home of an elderly woman who happened to call the Bellbrook Historical Museum requesting the service of a ghost hunter. The trustee gave me her phone number. I called the woman and talked to her, and she said she had a ghost living in her basement. The ghost would take items from her and replace them with things she didn't want. The investigation sounded harmless enough, and a friend of mine and we went to her house to do an investigation. We didn't find any ghosts, but suddenly we found ourselves fearing for our lives. That story, Jody, ended up as the first chapter in my book.
How do you plan on promoting your book?
Well, my endorsements have already helped promote the book, such as retired Mayor of Bellbrook, Mary Graves. She totally is supporting me in this endeavor. And Jody, your grandpa, Jim Pee Wee Martin, is also an endorsement on my book. He endorsed me wholeheartedly. He said, in anything I do, he's 100% behind me. Your grandpa and I, Jim Martin, we've been friends for almost 30 years, and I totally respect his endorsement. Also, the Winters Bellbrook Library sponsored a book signing for me in November, which was a huge success. I also attended the very first ever event, Shop Your Local Authors event at the Wright Public Library in Oakwood, where 18 public authors gathered to sell our books and network together. I've also just recently secured a spot at Bellbrook Sugar Maple Festival to be held this April in 2023.
Join us next time as Marcia takes us through her book,
Transcending the Heart, When God Sent Me the Ghosts.
one chapter at a time. You can look forward to some behind-the-scenes information on the next episode of No Earthly Explanation. Thank you, Jody and Marcia.